The European Union has reached a provisional trade agreement with Donald Trump, and let's just say reactions are mixed at best. This matters not only because US-EU trade is a critical part of the global economy, but also because it signals how major players might respond to the return of the Make America Great US administration. So, what exactly happened? We're talking about two of the world's biggest trading blocs, both claiming to be tough negotiators who fight for their citizens. You might expect any deal between them to be reasonably balanced, a classic win-win scenario. Well, not quite. If we've learned anything about Trump's approach to trade, is that he doesn't do balanced deals. He does America first deals. His negotiating style is built around applying maximum pressure, often unilaterally, and offering to back off in exchange for major concessions. That's exactly what happened here. Trump had threatened to impose a 30% baseline tariff on EU goods starting August the 1st. The EU managed to get that down to 15%, but only by giving up significant ground. In exchange for being hit only half as hard, the EU made several major commitments. Increased energy imports. The EU pledged to spend an additional $750 billion over 3 years on US energy, a figure that's almost equal to the entire annual energy exports of the United States. How this promise will be fulfilled is majorly unclear. The EU also promised $600 billion in investment into the US economy, but just hours after the announcement, EU officials admitted that such private sector investment isn't within their power to guarantee. Perhaps the most politically sensitive concession was a commitment to buy hundreds of billions of dollars in US military equipment. This last point is especially notable. Many European countries have already been discussing the urgent need to reduce their dependence on American weapons, particularly in the light of Trump's erratic stance on Ukraine and Russia and closeness to Mr. Putin. The risk of Washington one day denying them the use of critical military systems was seen as a major national security concern. Yet, here they are, committing to buying more US military hardware. While this doesn't completely stop Europe's effort to diversify its defense supply chain, it clearly represents a step back towards strategic dependence on the US. Time will tell if that's a good move. And here's where things get even murkier. This isn't a formal trade treaty. It's an outline deal, a loose political agreement with few binding mechanisms, and some of the headline figures, like the $600 billion investment pledge, are essentially aspirational. These aren't EU budget items, they're projections of what private companies might choose to do in the future. So why include them? Because they sound good on the podium. They wanted Trump to feel good. Trump can now return to his base and say, look how I made Europe cave. I brought jobs and money home. Whether or not any of it materializes is beside the point for these political purposes. To be fair, there's some precedent for these numbers. The EU currently has $2.88 trillion in private investment in the US, supporting roughly 3.4 million American jobs. So in theory, 600 billion more over several years could happen, but only under the right conditions, and certainly not by decree. Across the EU, reactions have ranged from bitter criticism to reluctant acceptance. France's Prime Minister called the deal a submission by Brussels and described it as a dark day for Europe. Hungary's Viktor Orban, a Trump ally, boasted that the EU Commission President Ursula von der Leyen had been eaten for breakfast by Trump. You can imagine Trump was very pleased with that comment. France's Minister for Europe took a more measured tone, calling the deal temporarily stabilizing, though he admitted it was unbalanced. Germany's Berenberg Bank welcomed the short-term clarity, but acknowledges it was ultimately a victory for Trump and a worse situation than before the trade war began. Many are now questioning why the EU didn't respond more forcefully earlier in the year when Trump launched his initial round of tariffs on April the 2nd. China and Canada retaliated almost immediately. The EU initially prepared to do the same, but on April the 10th, just after Trump paused his tariff implementation, the EU suspended its planned countermeasures. That, according to the Financial Times, was the turning point. By choosing not to hit back, the EU hoped to de escalate and negotiate a better outcome. But in the face of a bully, strength, not patience, tends to produce better results. One EU diplomat summed it up bluntly: "He's the bully in the schoolyard, and we didn't stand up to him. Those who don't hang together get hanged separately." So, what do you think? Is this the start of a new US EU relationship under Trump, or just another example of economic strong arming dressed up as diplomacy? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. I read every one of them. And if you found this breakdown helpful, do me and the algorithm a favor. Hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next deep dive into global finance, power politics, and the high stakes game shaping our future. This is just the beginning. The trade wars, energy battles, and geopolitical chess moves aren't slowing down, and neither are we. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.